What's going on, everybody? It's Josefa Salinas. I am here live today. Yes, you've got the community review live today because I thought it was incredibly important that we really look at what's ahead of us next Tuesday beyond the presidential election, which is we can go on for hours about that. But we have some really important things statewide and locally that are coming up that to me it was very important to discuss. So I sat there and I thought to myself, who would I like to invite to discuss these things with me? And there was nobody else I would rather have here, honestly, than a gentleman that I have shared the mic with before, back in our KTLK days, which was incredible when I've got my first chops broken with regard to talk radio. Morris O'Kelly, Mo Kelly, from KFI and all over the world, consulting now on Fox News and everywhere. Welcome.
Josefa, it is a pleasure to be with you. It's great to see you. It's even better to dialogue with you. It's nice to be able to have people we can call friends in this business beyond being colleagues. I think of you as my friend and family
Oh,
member.
absolutely.
And I love being able to sit with you today.
Yeah, well, it's so good to have you here. And one of my biggest reasons, again, for being here is the whole fact that we've got a big election coming up next Tuesday. Now, you were recently on Fox News. Talk to me a little bit about what you were there talking about, because I know it was a big thing that broke last Friday, and that big thing has ended up not being quite what it appeared to be.
Well, for those people who are in the Los Angeles area, I usually provide political commentary for Fox 11, usually for the 5 p.m. show. Give you the latest in what's going on in the presidential race. And if I could digress for a second, most people seem to think that what happens with the presidential election most affects us on a day-to-day basis, when in actuality, it doesn't. It's the local propositions, it's the local ballot
Yes.
initiatives, it's your local elected officials, which have a disproportionate effect on our lives. And some people seem to think because we've placed so much emphasis on just the presidential race that is more important than what else that we have to vote on down the ballot. And it couldn't be further from the truth.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the things that I was trying to get across to my son and his friends. He's third-year student at NYU. Yay, Milan.
Oh, my gosh.
And, yeah.
The time is just...
I know. Remember, little guy, you guys used to see a little guy running around, now third-year student at NYU. And he and his friends, a bunch of guys around our house all summer long, and we talked about the upcoming election, and they said they weren't really interested in voting because their vote didn't matter anyways. It seemed like the whole thing was just a crock. And I was just like, oh, my God, sit down. Nobody goes anywhere. Everybody who's
Whose
old
child
enough,
are you?
Yes, everybody who's old enough, grab a beer because you're not going anywhere. And I said, you don't understand how important, especially on a local level, voting is. Granted, I can see where you might think, although I don't agree, that that presidential thing probably isn't going to touch you directly. It is. But I guarantee you the local things are going to touch you.
Absolutely.
They are absolutely going to touch you on a daily basis, from getting in your car to where your kids go to school to where you grocery shop, because I know it's a hot button for Mo, and we'll talk about that in a minute. One of the measures here that's going to be definitely hotly contested by people like Mo. And so it's important that the local issues really are the focus. They really are. Presidential election, yes, it's important. It is important. But this local stuff matters. And who reads? Who reads this big, huge guide that came through? Nobody. But they get there, and really what it comes down to, unfortunately, with a lot of the stuff is who had the best ad.
And who wrote the better ballot summary? Many times people will make the decision on just that little blurb that they may see on the ballot as they go in to make a decision.
Right. So let's get started, shall
All right.
we? All right. So first of all, let me just ask you, in the actual debates thus far, what did you think with the candidates for, so let's just talk national, the presidential election?
I was embarrassed for our democracy. I was embarrassed for our country. I believe that type of discourse, if you want to call it that, was beneath the office of the president. We spent so much time trying to debate whether who was less incorrigible, who was less reprehensible, who was less
Right.
despicable. And the type of rhetoric that they were engaging in was beyond the pale. And I can say that I abhor Donald Trump more than I abhor Hillary Clinton. That's not a secret. But that's not the condemnation of one is not an endorsement of the other. And we need to be very clear that what has been going on for the past year and a half in our presidential politics and how we've reported on it have been just really despicable overall.
Yeah, I mean, we have sunk to a new low that makes me embarrassed. Not embarrassed to be an American, because tell everybody I'm very proud to be an American. I've been around the world. I've seen
Mm.
other countries. I have seen how other people live, and I'm telling you that right or wrong on this issue or that issue, this is a great place to live because you got hope. You can get up and go to the library and be on a computer for free, take classes for free, get high school for free, do college classes for free. So there's hope. There's change is possible if you get up and go get it. That's the difference in this country. Change is possible if you get up and go get it.
I do a weekly BBC radio commentary, and the question I get all the time is basically, what the heck is going on in
Oh,
America?
I'll bet.
Because from the outside in, we always like to see ourselves as American exceptionalism. But looking in, as far as this democratic experiment goes, people are curious around the world as far as why are these two individuals leading the way and being the spokespeople and future standard bearers for democracy as far as what we want to export around the world. If democracy is what we're trying to give other countries and it's going to be Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton leading the way, that gives the world pause in many ways.
Great pause. Great pause. Okay, so let's start with these incredible things that are on the ballot here. We've already decided that some are a little more important based on our own personal
Yes.
opinion, so we're going to spend a little more time on those. Let's go right now to Prop 51. School bonds funding for K to 12 and community college facilities. It's an initiative statute. Here's what it is. Authorizes $9 billion in general obligation bonds for new construction and modernization of K to 12 public school facilities, charter schools, vocational education facilities, and California community college facilities. The fiscal impact costs the state about $17.6 billion to pay off both the principal and the interest on the bonds. What does a yes vote mean? A yes vote on this measure that the state could sell $9 billion in general obligation bonds for education facilities. A no on this measure means the state would not have the authority to sell new general obligation bonds for K to 12 public schools and community college facilities.
Intellectually and emotionally, I'm always for supporting schools, public education. Both my parents, retired public educators. Intellectually and emotionally, I support it, but I always have to wonder why California is last in terms of education as far as the caliber of students we're putting out. So the question then becomes not whether throwing money at it is the answer, but whether we are being prudent in the way that we're spending the money that we're using. My first mind's I would say yes on 51, but I'm concerned about whether we know how to manage the money that we use. And if we're just going to have another bond, just another initiative to spend more money on education that's not yielding the results that we should be getting, then there's something wrong with our government, not our educational system.
Well, I'd like to see some type of civilian oversight.
Hello.
Not elected officials, not anybody with their own agenda, a group of people from, North, Central, and Southern California, where they meet once a month or once a quarter, whatever it would take, to actually see what's being done, because this is kind of broad. K to 12 schools, if it had just been K to 12 schools, I would have said yes, because so many schools need the help. But then I want to see the list of the schools you're going to do, and what are you going to do for those schools? But it's not just K to 12. It's K to 12, it's charter schools, it's community colleges, and it's really not a whole lot of money when you think about it and how it's going to get spread around, and then who gets the contracts? How do those contracts? I mean, there's so many things to me that just give me pause.
I would like to support it. I would like to say affirmatively, yes, let's support our schools. But we can only vote on these the way that they're presented, the way that they're written. We can't mentally just fill in blanks. We can't fill in things which have not been specifically itemized or made clear to us. And I agree with you on that point. If we're going to be voting yes on this, then I would like to know how it's going to be spent and how it's going to be amortized across all these thousands of schools across the state. And not every school is in the same level of need. So,
Right.
so I mean,
Yeah, but how do they? I want to know how are the schools picked? Who's determining it? And that matters to me because there are so many schools. I mean, I go to some of these schools, for the library commission. I go and read at schools and things, and I look at them like, oh my gosh, who would go to school here?
Right.
And these kids have to come here every day. It makes me cry, the state that some of these schools are in. But how do I know that if I vote yes, that it's actually going to affect those schools? Who's making that decision?
You
Whose
don't
pocket
know.
is lined when the schools they want to have covered or redone or whatever are actually the ones that get done?
It's asking for a whole lot of trust, and I'm a
Yes.
cynical person by nature.
Yes.
And I
We know this.
and we talked about this
Hmm.
as far as the lottery and as far as how that money was supposed to be spent on California education. It's obviously not doing the job, or we're not using the money wisely. And those are two separate conversations, but both of them are problems for whatever
Right.
reasons. And now you're coming back for more money because they need more money to help our K through 12 and our community colleges. I'm not
Yeah.
so sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So that 51 gives us both pause. That's going to be one of
Absolutely.
those things that, you know
Absolutely.
what, if you had just given me a little more meat in this where I could actually see that I've got somewhere to go and truly see exactly where it's being spent and how, and is there some kind of a committee away from the politicians that is going to help make these decisions, I might have leaned a little more. I'm still up in the air, but it gives me pause. 52. This is another one that a lot of people are really kind of going back and forth on, and that is Medi-Cal hospital fee program. Extends indefinitely an existing statute that imposes fees on hospitals to fund Medi-Cal health care services, care for uninsured patients, and children's health coverage. Fiscal impact? Uncertain fiscal impact. Goes from ranging from relatively little to annual state general fund savings to around $1 billion and increased funding for public hospitals in the low hundreds of millions of dollars annually. A yes means that existing change imposed on most private hospitals that is scheduled to end on January 1st, 2018 under the current law would be extended permanently. It would be harder for the legislature to make changes to it. Revenue raised would be used to create state savings, increase payments to hospital services to low-income Californians, and provide grants to public hospitals. A no means that an existing change to imposed on most private hospitals would end on January 1st, 2018, unless additional action by the legislature is extended it.
Can I skip to the end and just say yes? Because
Okay.
I don't want any type of a diversion of funds away from low income or certain hospitals which may be of greater need. As we go back to the previous proposition, this is a little more specific as far as where the funds would be going. And if you allow then the monies to be diverted after 2018, we're not exactly sure where it will be diverted, but we know that there will not be the steady stream to help the hospitals in those communities which would need it the most.
Right. And then where are these people going to fall through the cracks at?
Right.
Again, it's one of those. I think this one kind of speaks for itself, but again, I'm not trying to influence the way anybody votes, but there it is, and it's kind of specific, and it lets us know it's extending what exists.
Oh, let me be very specific. If I say yes, I'm 50, I'm saying how I would vote because in my mentality, I'm always thinking in terms of conscience towards community. If it doesn't impact me directly personally, then I have to think about how it impacts my community.
Right. All right, let's go to Prop 53, Revenue Bonds, Statewide Voter Approval Initiative Constitutional Amendment. Requires statewide voter approval before any revenue bonds can be issued or sold by the state for certain projects and the bond amount if the bond amount exceeds $2 billion. Fiscal impact? State and local fiscal effects are unknown and would depend on which projects are affected by the measure and what actions governmental agencies and voters take in response to the measure's voting requirement. A yes on this would mean that the state, a yes means state revenue bonds totaling more than $2 billion for a project that is funded, owned, or managed by the state would require statewide voter approval. A no means that the state revenue bonds could continue to be used without voter approval.
I know Governor Brown wants a no on this, and I'm inclined to agree with him for this reason. If, like, say, you wanted to have the roads fixed in San Francisco and that project was going to cost less than $2 billion, you don't want that to be influenced. If it's going to cost more than $2 billion, you don't want people in Los Angeles voting on that. But that's part of the reason why we have elected officials. That's why we have a state assembly to work as our proxy to vote on our behalf. I don't believe that everything needs to be a statewide voter initiative when it comes to apportionment of funds. That's why we have members of the state assembly. That's why we have county supervisors and so forth to handle those things respectfully. And I don't think that we need, the way I interpret it is, I don't think we need to have a statewide vote for something that's $2 billion. If it happens to be over $2 billion, that's what our elected officials are for.
I'm kind of in the middle on this one because
Okay.
I just have this thing about the people having a voice, and I think that I know what our elected officials are supposed to be doing because that's why we put them there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't always agree that they are. So I kind of would like the last opportunity to have a say-so
Mm-hmm.
in something large.
How would you? Okay, is there's a $4 billion plan to update the roads and highways in Lodi, California? I'm in Southern California. If it's passed to a statewide vote, most likely Los Angeles
Oh.
Angelinos are not going to pass that.
Well, this is true. Now, yes, perfect example. Example of why it could work, why it should work, as far as not having a statewide vote. Because you're right, people might down here might go fondue
Right.
to the people in the middle of
That's a
California.
you problem.
Who cares? Right? It's not us. It's you. So I see where when you put it in that perspective, and hopefully now we've given an example. I was hoping that we would have an example that somebody could really wrap their head around.
Yeah, you got 4 million
Yeah.
people in Los Angeles, presumably voting their own interests as Southern Californians, as opposed to Northern California or statewide interests.
All right, let's look at 54. Prohibits legislature from passing any bill unless published on the internet for 72 hours before a vote. Requires legislature to record its proceedings and post on the internet. Again, internet. Authorizes use of recordings. Fiscal impact, a one-time cost of $1 million to $2 million, an ongoing cost of $1 million annually to record legislative meetings and make videos to those meetings available on the internet. Boy, I'd like that contract because I don't know why it's costing them $1 million
Right.
to record what they can grab an iPad and press